metabolically we're not functioning well, and it shows up as all these different diseases.
If you take excessive antioxidants, you turn off your ability to improve from exercise.
Athletes did not build muscle and did not do as well when they overdid antioxidants.
Your heart races, your skin flushes, you feel like you're going to throw up or pass out. You've got to take control of your health and of your biology to make it do what you want. Low effort, high return, and that's what I'm all about.
The DNA only has one purpose.
They make a device called the Nano that has a direct effect on VO2 max.
You're listening to The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey.
Today, we're going to talk about VO2 max. And before you say, oh my God, I don't want to listen to this, chronic cardio is a pain in the ass and is not a good way to raise VO2 max. The reason we're going to talk about this is it's an important component of longevity. And if you want to live a long time, as you read about in Superhuman, at least hopefully you read about my big book on longevity, or if you read Smarter Not Harder, I go into ways to raise VO2 max in a small amount of time. Your goal is to have good VO2 max, but to not spend 6 hours a week slogging it out, doing zone 2 cardio with a doctor who charges you for longevity work, but tells you that it's not possible to extend human lifespan. So I don't believe over-exercising is a path to longevity, but I do believe VO2 max is an important variable. So the question is, what do we do about that that's time efficient and doesn't mean that you have to become some sort of endurance athlete in order to believe you'll live longer, because it's hard to have new hips and knees when you're 65, which is what happens if you do it. So how do we make all this work? And the ability to have endurance is priceless, not because you could run away from tigers because they run out of energy anyway. What's most important is the endurance from having higher VO2 max reflects itself in your body's ability to remain calm and your body's ability to do the work of maintaining your system. So if you're low energy and you have no endurance or no VO2 max capacity, you're kind of stressed all the time. So I have an expert with me today named Rowena Gates, and she's studied for years cellular optimization, and she works with a company called Eng3 Corporation. They make a device called the Nano you've probably seen me using for years now, that has a direct effect on VO2 max. So we're going to go into reactive oxygen species, how these are making you old, and some things you can do about it. Rowena, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Many listeners know about reactive oxygen species, but I don't think most people really understand them. What is ROS and why do we care?
Well, reactive oxygen species are one type of free radical that you can't avoid because of the oxygen irony, which is you can't live with it forever and you can't live without it for probably 10 minutes. So you need the oxygen, but it's like the exhaust out of a car. To burn the engine, you're going to end up with reactive oxygen species, and they're always going to be either mitigated by an antioxidant or they'll do damage.
I like to think of it as rust. In fact, that is a reactive oxygen species. You put oxygen on iron, you get rust. So your cells aren't made out of iron, at least mostly, but they do have a similar oxidative process. And since all life is based on ox redox, this is how your cells make ATP and electrons, which fuel your longevity. Like, okay, it's a necessary thing. So why would we want to reduce reactive oxygen species? Wouldn't that reduce our energy?
You want to reduce the amount of damage it does. You need the reactive oxygen species. They not only are a damaging byproduct, but they also have a cell signaling function in the body. So you don't want to eliminate them, but you want to reduce the damage that they do. That's where we come in. That's what we're kind of all about.
It's a really important thing to understand in aging. If you take excessive antioxidants, and I've done this very early in my path, and I think, I'll do the same thing as everyone else instead of a personalized approach. What you do is you turn off your ability to improve from exercise because you don't get the benefits of having some free radicals. It's when you get too much, they stick around too long, or when you allow them to do damage. So one of the things that you might do is say, I need antioxidants, and you need some, but if you don't get the benefits of exercise, you broke. And if you don't get enough, you get too much damage. So there are other things you could do, like you could train effectively And my last book was a lot about how do you raise VO2 max without taking a lot of time, without generating excessive free radicals through excessive exercise. Or you could actually make your cells better at handling reactive oxygen species. And this is where Rowena comes in. So Rowena, how do you do this?
So that's all the cell activities, having everything work better in the cell. And that's where we come in. And we have a very, very fundamental approach to that. With the NanoV device, it influences the environment in the cell, which is the water. And after that, the body takes over. And so it's so fundamental that it doesn't override anything, and the body knows what to do with it when you give it a little extra support. So one of the first things it does is you can measure that improvement in mitochondrial function.
Okay. This is fundamental to human life, and it's missing from most medical knowledge. If you go way back in my journey, there was a time when I said, hey guys, if you take butter and MCT oil and you blend them in coffee, it works really well. If you don't blend them and you just eat the butter and drink the coffee, it doesn't work. And it got to the point where I went really deep on the science because I'm a nerd. And I ended up funding research at the University of Washington. And this is about the structure of water and how it affects cell biology. So inside your cells, the outer layer is a bunch of little tiny droplets of fat. It's your cell membrane. And if you were a plant, it'd be your cell wall. They're slightly different, but some people use both. But in humans, it's a membrane, or in animals. And then inside there, you have a bunch of water and a gel. And what influences the cell's behavior and how effective the cell is the water structured? And you do this with things like sunlight, with things like movement, things like infrared light. And it's profoundly effective. And it turns out that one of the reasons people feel so much different if they take their Danger coffee, which has minerals that affect cell biology, but not reactive oxygen species, and then you put in these types of oils, those oils change the structure of the water when you mix them up. So in a typical day, what your body does, you drink a glass of water. It's regular bulk water that even if it's special spring water, whatever, your body says, oh, good God, I've got to heat this water up with body heat, hold it up against the cell membrane, and it'll change into something called exclusion zone water. Or there's other delivery systems for exclusion zone water. The more exclusion zone water you have, the better your mitochondrial function and the better your ability to make your own antioxidants goes up. How do you use NanoV to change the structure of water inside my cells?
So you hit it. It's all about exclusion zone water, which only forms on surfaces, which could be the cell membrane, the mitochondria, and especially the proteins. Because in the cell, there might be 10,000 or more proteins in one cell. They're very small, they're all over the place, and they create a lot of surface area. And so if exclusion zone water only forms on surfaces, it forms in layers. Mm-hmm. Then if you can increase that exclusion zone water, which could be through diet, and what you're talking about with the coffee, I know you worked with Jerry Pollack, and he showed that, and he's been a wonderful friend to us as well, just a wonderful man.
He's the guy who did the research at the University of Washington.
Right, the exclusion zone water, called exclusion zone because everything else is pressed out because the water molecules are so closely packed together that everything else is excluded. And we call that ordered water. And that ordered water surface has to form on proteins. And quite a long time ago, they figured out that it was the water that enabled the proteins to fold, which they have to do before they function. And if you have unfolded or misfolded proteins, you have liabilities. So they have to fold or they can't work, and they get the energy to fold from the water. And so that part was all known in cell biology, and in NanoV, we just leveraged it by helping improve the ordered water in the cells to support the protein folding, and the body takes over. And that's why I said earlier, it's just the environment, it's the water that we're influencing. And after that, the body really does, it knows what to do. It's the most regenerative machine imaginable almost.
You imagine if some of the water in your cells is not exclusion zone water because your body didn't do a good job of converting the water. And there's all kinds of environmental things that lower the amount of this water. You must have this water to make ATP. The Krebs cycle, which was really fundamental to my longevity book and my brain book, actually. I think of it like a little motor. It goes around, but if it's in the wrong fluid, it doesn't have the right amount of viscosity. So you can't make energy. And if you can't make energy, you can't make more exclusions on water. And if you're low on energy because you're low on exclusions on water, the body has these things that are necessary to do to stay alive right now. And then it has things that are necessary to do to repair and maintain and extend your longevity. It will automatically stop doing all the maintenance stuff, including folding proteins or repairing proteins, if you don't have enough exclusion on water. And you look at what does cancer look like? Well, there's misfolded proteins. So a deficiency of exclusions on water is a problem. So I like to say that the most efficient and effective thing to do is to just go for a 4-hour run in the sunshine every day. Because if you just do that, you get sunshine, makes exclusions of water, all that movement of water in the tissues. The fact that you're going to have to live something like 20% longer just to make up for all the suffering, that doesn't work. It's not sustainable. Nobody does that. And if they do, does that time come from their kids? Does it come from their work? Because it's not effective time. And if you love it and you're doing weekends, fine, more power to you. Start saving up for your knee replacement. But if you want to do this every day to get exclusion zone water, it's not going to happen. So my biohacking stack here at home, I do everything I can to improve this. We go to Upgrade Labs. We do all this. So red and infrared light, whole body vibration, moving up and down, doing a rebounder. All of those can influence it, and just going out in the sun for 20 minutes, right? All of these are beneficial. But we only have so much time. And if you're in Canada, there isn't even any sun half the year. So what do? You can just breathe it. And just like smoking or vaping or nebulizing are very effective ways to get things into your cells, even though vaping's a really dumb idea. But you can nebulize glutathione. We all know this is a way to get medication in.
Yeah.
So you could try to drink exclusions on water, which I think helps. Or you could breathe it. And then the results are actually stunning, and which is why I want to do this episode. Yeah. What do you see in studies when people spend a few minutes breathing air from a Nano V?
Well, I think the most interesting research relating to you is the metabolic testing that was done, and it's a group called Pinoy. We have wonderful metabolic testing equipment, and they could show that the VO2 max was significantly improved by 7.8% in one session, and the respiratory exchange ratio also 11% improvement. And then for metabolic function, the crossover point, which is burning carbs versus burning fats, super important in weight management and aspects like that, also improved in one session.
So a 7.9% improvement, that was in VO2 max?
7.8 actually.
Oh, 7.8%.
We can round up to 8.
That was on VO2 max measurements, though.
Yes.
Okay, guys, a 12% improvement in VO2 max is equal to 2 years of additional expected lifespan. So you're getting, about 1.3 years, if my math is about right?
I'm not going to comment on that. That seems dicey to me.
Got it. Well, all I know from writing books on longevity and studying it for 25 years is that if you can increase VO2 max, you increase expected lifespan. Is it causative? Probably. Is it correlated? Yeah. So I feel really comfortable saying increase VO2 max to increase your longevity. Will it extend your life beyond the normal rate of aging? Probably not by itself, right? But what it does do is it supports having great energy, and you do other longevity therapies on top of it. So now you don't get degenerative diseases. You're highly functional. You look better. Your brain works better. Your metabolism burns fat better. What happens when people cross over about 50 to their fat burning?
They become way less effective, but they're metabolically less effective. That's at the heart of so much of this, all these various specialties in medicine. If you go right back to the heart of it, it's that metabolically we're not functioning well, and it shows up as all these different diseases.
It's funny because I had really serious mitochondrial dysfunction, even in my 20s. I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and I realized mitochondria were not the common topic they are today. And after I went through all of this stuff, I got to figure out how to fix this in me. And so I became a scientist studying my own mitochondrial function. And the more things I did to make them work better, the more my brain worked.
Yeah.
So biohacking is at its core mitochondrial centric. In my world, mitochondria are the frontline sensors of reality. And they do it very, very fast. And they're a distributed consciousness of ancient bacteria. And the data that I have says 48% of people under age 40 have early onset mitochondrial insufficiency. And over age 40, everyone has it unless they are hacking themselves, maybe with an NAD, because that is aging. So have the mitochondrial function of a young person, and you have the physiology of a young person. The spiritual side of mitochondria that's a part of biohacking is something I want to go there with you on. If mitochondria are sensing reality and they are running at half the power they could, they're going to be stressed.
Yes.
What does that do to your central nervous system?
There's huge, it's very easy to measure actually with testing with heart rate variability, for example, where, well, that's your autonomic nervous system, but it's a stress on everything. And when things improve, you'll see the autonomic nervous system improve right away and bring a person out of stress mode.
So if you think about this, let's say, man, I'm stressed all the time. I'm feeling anxiety a lot. Increasing your VO2 max increases cell energy, which makes the cells less stressed, which makes you less stressed, which makes your mother-in-law not look like a bad person.
Right. And if you think of cognitive function, your brain is burning, 25% of the oxygen you use is burned by the brain. Where is the oxidative damage going to happen? And so you think of that whole cycle and your cognitive function and how that affects mood, depression, things like that, then it all wraps in pretty tightly for that stress mode with feeling more anxious, more stressed, and so on in the brain because it's such a big user of oxygen.
It is a huge user of oxygen, and a lot of people don't realize this, but your mitochondria, they don't just make energy. They don't just sense reality. They decide what to do, and they are the things that manufacture or fold proteins. We know that with heat exposure, they actually will unfold a damaged protein and refold it if they have exclusions on water. And we know that they manufacture melatonin inside the cell as an antioxidant. And very importantly, your mitochondria make glutathione.
Yes.
And listeners know glutathione's a big deal. It's not that you just take your glutathione, it's that your body makes it. What happens when your mitochondria are working very well? Can they make glutathione?
Well, it's interesting because glutathione is an antioxidant. It's not a protein. And the Nano device only helps the protein function. But glutathione on its own does nothing. All that metabolic use of glutathione or any other antioxidant or any vitamin or any biochemical process, those are all protein functions. And so when you, if you're not making enough glutathione in the mitochondria, at least have it working really well. And so just you can get that upward spiral, have it work better in the system, then the mitochondria work better, and you want to spiral upward.
So when mitochondria work better, they can manufacture more glutathione, which makes them resistant to oxidative stress.
Right.
Right. So I don't mind boosting my glutathione, but I want my cells to be really good at doing that so they can quench free radicals after they've had a chance to be signaling molecules. Right.
And that's actually another area of research since I last spoke with you was in total antioxidant activity. The Nano showed improvement in one session and also day-over-day improvement over 5 days, so that it suggests that when you give the body a little help, its antioxidant activity is just going to work better, and that it's a cumulative effect.
Wow.
Yeah. And you won't feel that, by the way. I want to just point that out, because as biohackers, we love to feel stuff. We love the big hit, and that was great. And that's why we have coffee and things. But most things actually, you don't notice. You don't see them. You can't feel it, I should say. And total antioxidant activity is one of those things. Is it good for you? Incredibly good for you. Will you actually say, oh, my antioxidants are working better? No.
You will when you wake up the next morning.
Right.
You'll see changes in your skin, changes in your love handles, and things like that.
Exactly. But you may not, you might not make those direct correlations.
This is one of those things where, what is a little device you put on your desk and you breathe structured water through a little thing that kind of blows it in your face or through a cannula.
Uh-huh.
And when you do this, you're getting that 7.8% boost. And if you do it regularly, just throughout the day or even just once a day, what you're doing is over time, you're building more and more and more resilience. So when people come to 40 years of Zen in Seattle, it's 5 days of super intense meditation with computers assisting you, possibly with ketamine. We have nano beads there. And people breathe this because my job is to be able to push their brains beyond what they can do in a normal week, because they're fitting 40 years of meditation in 5 days, right? So it's like a marathon for the brain every day. So why would I want a nano bead? So they have less reactive oxygen species affecting the brain, and so they have more ATP in their brain. And since you can talk, you can type, you can do whatever you want, while there's a nano V on, it doesn't take away time from the rest of your day. My nightmare would be spending 8 hours a day on longevity stuff, because I'd have to live a lot longer.
You'd probably die of boredom.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love 40 years of Zen, and I love it. It's very easy to measure brain endurance and performance. And the NanoV plays a big role there. And cognitive function is something that we just see a huge emerging interest in cognitive function.
Yeah, it's funny. I started there back when my brain was just fried in my 20s. I got into smart drugs and nootropics and all of that. And I was like, this is most important. And oh, shoot, to make that work, I got to fix my body. And then, oh, great, now I got to work on the emotional and, the meditative and spiritual and all that. But all of them circle around mitochondria.
Yep.
Which is fascinating. So you have a tech that on a per unit of suffering basis, it's not hard to breathe air. And so it's an intervention that doesn't take any energy or effort to do other than flipping a switch to turn the machine on.
Right.
Right. Versus, go out and do 85 air squats, one-legged while holding broccoli or whatever the thing is. It's like a low friction kind of intervention.
And it stacks. I bet you don't do it alone, right? You can always use red light or PEMF or breathe molecular hydrogen or something at the same time.
Even if you're just doing breath work or meditating, you could.
I use it meditating.
You will get better results from meditation with better mitochondrial function.
Yeah.
And it's strange, but your mitochondria listen to your meditation. If you get in the right state, they'll change their function. They'll calm down. You actually direct them with advanced meditation. You just want unstressed mitochondria that make enough energy, which is why they're unstressed, because then that allows them to listen better to what you're doing. So you can shift your state at will instead of them shifting your state because they just wanted more ATP.
I need to do another round of 40 years of Zen.
Let's talk about post-exercise recovery. I am a huge fan of doing exactly the right amount and intensity of exercise as you need to get results, and no more, partly because I have shit to do, but also just because I think that most people have something better to do with their time. And I don't mean if you enjoy pickleball, it's not really exercise. That's having fun. It's just being metabolically fit. But pickleball doesn't change your VO2 max in a meaningful way, right? So you could post pickleball or post CrossFit. It doesn't really matter. You use NanoV. What happens after exercise when you use NanoV?
So the most dramatic one is a faster immune response, which means faster recovery.
Okay.
And the metrics there range from 10 to 17% faster recovery kicking in. And if you use it before exercise, there was a whopping 17% less blood lactate. And this is all double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover study done at a university.
So
17% was a big one.
Blood lactate, well, it is a fuel source, which a lot of people don't understand, but it also contributes to muscle soreness. And how long do you have to sit there breathing NanoV to get a 17% drop in blood lactate?
Amazingly, that one was actually half a session.
Which is how long?
So that would be 10 minutes, say. And so for any serious athlete in one of those sports where lactate's an issue, because it's not all sports, then it could probably make a meaningful difference for those people.
Do you see pro athletes doing NanoV?
Some. I'd like to see more. And we have 2 Olympic golds this Olympics, which I love. Both the Woodalls had a NanoV device that they bought before they went to Paris. And so that was exciting. And then we have a sprinkling of pro athletes. Nick Foles. You introduced him.
Yeah, Nick's a friend. He's been on the show. And guys, you probably remember Nick, Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
And they had an absolute unexpected turnaround. In his biography, he wrote about how he was doing all the biohacking stuff and taking most of the supplements I make. I was like so honored because we didn't have a deal. He just like, hey, check out this book. I'm like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing. So we got to be friends and just a great human being. So what he found is that he could extend his career through biohacking. We have The Bryant brothers, the longest running and most successful tennis doubles guys in the world.
Amazing guys.
And these are all biohackers. Tom Brady, they're all biohackers. And what they're doing, I'm overextending my capacity, whether it's in training or especially when they're competing. So then heal like a crazy person, recover like a crazy person, which allows them to extend and train again. So it's almost like overtraining, over-recovering, or then you do that for a while, then you recover, then you have your big game. And then you over-recover after the game, and that allows you to train again. And given a 17% drop in lactate, what else would drop lactate like that?
I don't know. And I've talked to trainers who say if you got, 4 or 5%, that would just be remarkable.
Wow.
It's a huge drop for that. Just having them work better for longer. And that was with an all-out exercise test. So it's about an hour of a really hard workout. They're pushing these guys during that test.
Wow. I understand the mechanisms of action. I'm still kind of blown away by the degree of change. This VO2 max stuff is a huge number. Mm-hmm. The drop in blood lactate is a huge number. And 10 minutes of breathing stuff that comes through a tube that smells like air. It almost seems too good to be true. Do you hear that?
I do hear that. And I think it's because it's rooted in biophysics and it's working at such a fundamental level. And I would say Nano itself is not the amazing thing. The amazing thing is the human body. So you give it a little boost, you make the environment a bit better, and what it can do with that is remarkable. And that's what I think is so impressive. And we're just giving it that boost, helping the environment so the body can take over and do its thing.
I've been saying Nanovi a lot. It's NANOVI is the name of the product.
And if you go to eng3.com/Dave, then you'll get some information that was tailored for Dave because he likes scientific results and things.
There you go. You want to check it out, eng3.com/Dave. And the science is actually very convincing. Like I said, double-blind, placebo-controlled. We know how it works. We know why it works. And we know at least some of the effects that it has. The downstream effects of better mitochondrial function, higher VO2 max. Every one of the 4 killers in my book on longevity, it's Superhuman, are caused by mitochondrial function. So diabetes, your mitochondria suck at combining air and food to make electricity. That's metabolic dysfunction. So, better functioning mitochondria. Do you have any studies on blood sugar regulation in the NanoV?
That's easy. The blood sugar is easy for diabetics to measure. We don't study diseases like diabetes, but it's always apparent for diabetics who are taking their blood glucose levels.
What about just healthy people with a continuous glucose monitor? Do they see swings?
We haven't studied that.
Got it.
It would be super interesting, and I have my hunch is that that's all part of this whole metabolic efficiency that shows up in these tests.
I'd bet on that.
Yeah, and then we are doing some mitochondrial testing with Amal Patel, whom you probably know.
Yeah, and Dr. Amal Patel from UC San Diego has been on the show. He runs a company called MeScreen. They're a big exhibitor at the Biohacking Conference. This is a direct blood test to see how your mitochondria are doing. Mm-hmm. Do you have any results you can talk about there yet?
I know I haven't started it yet, so
okay.
It's too early.
Okay. I suspect you'll find some good stuff. Those are big 4 killers: diabetes, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. They're all mitochondrial dysfunction. So in my playbook, if you'd like to lower your odds of getting those things, well, maybe you should have better functioning mitochondria. All of biohacking revolves around that.
And better, protein activities in general, because a good percentage of mitochondria are mitochondrial proteins. Mm-hmm. And so anything helping all of that, it's all synergistic.
And mitochondria are some of the most mysterious and fun parts of the cell because they actually vote. And it's called quorum sensing. So you have between a couple hundred and up to 15,000 per cell. Heart cells and brain cells have 15,000. And little news asterisk point. In women, ovaries have 100,000 mitochondria per cell, far more than the mitochondrial density you'll find anywhere in men, including our gonads. So there are parts where having better functioning mitochondria are even more important. And given all of the things that we've seen with reproductive difficulties, that was my first book, was on that, having better functioning water in your cells would be fundamental to life. Do you have any research on that?
That makes perfect sense. We haven't looked at that, but Yeah, and there's so many stressors. That's where, women that have trouble conceiving or men that have trouble initiating conception or whatever.
I think that's called just not being good at dating. Just kidding.
And so, but there's so many different stressors that are coming into play. And so anything you can do to help your body clean that up. And it's not, I hate to say it, Dave, but it's not just the mitochondria, right? There's all these metabolic processes and detoxification and things.
They're all run by mitochondria though, aren't they?
Yeah, and by proteins. They're partners in absolutely everything. Because remember, the DNA only has one purpose. It's the blueprint for the proteins.
Yes.
So that's how fundamental we are here. So between the two of them, all of these other things have to work, like detoxification, which may be an issue in any of the fertility issues. Mm-hmm. And, obviously the oxidative stress damage, wherever that hits. So there's all these different systems and functions that we can agree our proteins and your mitochondria are really the key to it all.
Mitochondria make and fold proteins, and then they power the proteins to do what they're supposed to do. Right?
Well, hang on. The ribosome is going to make the protein, right? You're going to get the transcription with the mRNA, and then it translates.
The ribosome will read the DNA, right? But what
mRNA will, yes.
So like the RNA essentially reads the DNA, right, to make copies of it.
But a study came out last month that showed that the proteins that stay with the ribosome instead of springing free of it actually perform like quite a lot better in the folding process.
Interesting.
So it's like it mothers them a little bit.
Right.
But that just came out a few weeks ago. So there's by the way, that AlphaFold 2 now. There's some really interesting stuff coming out with the AI, what they're able to model with this.
So the way it works inside our cells is our cells make glutathione inside the gooey stuff, the cytosol inside the cells, right? They do this via power that comes in from NAD, which you might have heard of because I've done several episodes on NAD. You've seen David Sinclair on the show talking about NAD. So you have more NAD, you have more ability to carry electrons. Mitochondria make electrons, NAD transports electrons into the cell. The cell makes glutathione and hands the glutathione back to the mitochondria, where it uses the glutathione to protect itself from reactive oxygen species. And what would you bet that you need exclusion zone water inside the cell for the cytosol to work to make glutathione so that the mitochondria can have enough?
Absolutely, because that's 100% protein functions. Even though glutathione is an antioxidant, not a protein, it does nothing without the whole cascade of the protein functions that make it work in the body.
Now, if you're saying, Dave, my eyes glazed over, you said cyto something or another, here's the deal. Your cells make antioxidants that the mitochondria use. If your cells do a good job of that, you won't get damage from reactive oxygen species. And your cells will work better, which means your metabolism works better, which means your VO2 max goes up, which means your endurance goes up and your relaxation increases, and all kinds of good things happen. And we want to hack that system inside the cell so that you can make NAD when you need to, you can make glutathione when you need to, and you make electricity when you need to. And we're doing that via, in this case, the Nano V, or any of these other techniques that I talked about that have a lower effect on increasing exclusions on water. So this is pretty cool stuff. Mm-hmm. What do you know about NAD and Nano V?
Well, NAD is needed for a whole bunch of these processes to work, and that's why people supplement it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when you do an NAD drip, it's far more comfortable when you do a Nano V at the same time. Oh. And that's very likely a utilization issue. Your body can keep up on that utilization. People drip in much shorter time.
Okay.
And it's very likely because the body's taking advantage of the extra NAD plus on the fly. And so you don't kind of get behind yourself and take a long time to drip.
Interesting. So 10 years ago, I did my first round of NAD IVs. And this is something that we do in the longevity field. And it's something that was pioneered with alcoholics. It turns out when they get between 10 and 20 of these IVs, each one usually takes 2 or 3 hours. Your heart races, your skin flushes, you feel like you're going to sort of throw up or pass out. It's not pleasant. And over time, as you get healthier and healthier biology, you can do these faster and faster. It takes me about 45 minutes to do a gram. And all the functional medicine doctors listening, and there's tons of them, and thank you guys for tuning in. All of them are going, what? That's incredibly fast. And what you're saying, though, is if I use a Nano V, I'm breathing it during an IV, it makes the IV go faster?
Yeah, you can turn up your drip more because you're more comfortable.
That means that every doctor who has patients getting IV drips, which are notoriously uncomfortable, if they had a Nano V, they could do more patients in a day.
Well, you could do more patients in a day, but you're also probably getting better outcomes.
Wow. Does that work with NAD
supplements? Because you're utilizing it better.
So you could take something like Qualia NAD, and then you could do your Nano V, and because that's upregulating your NAD production, it probably would work better.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Almost
cool.
any of those, anything should work better because what they're doing is initiating a biochemical process, and every single one of those biochemical processes are protein regulated or initiated by enzymes that are proteins.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So there you go, a little miniature masterclass on how do your cells make antioxidants and what powers it. End of the day, it's mitochondria, which allows you to fold the proteins, because if you don't have proteins and you have mitochondria, you're just a bacteria.
Well, we really focus heavily, and we're the only technology out there really unique in focusing on protein folding.
Yeah.
To create that ordered water, easy water that's needed for proteins to fold. And so that's so hand in hand with any mitochondrial function. I mean, they're both essential and interplay between them. And then there's all these great things like sunlight. It's just that we have so many things that are counteracting even getting clean sunlight and things. That's why our body needs this extra help.
Yeah.
The body itself is an amazing repair machine.
There are people who will say, I like to get all my nutrients from Mother Nature. I don't want to use any biohacks. Like, cool. You should then also only get your toxins from Mother Nature, and you should be in nature all the time for that system to work, which means you need to move outside. You should probably sleep on some hay. You shouldn't wear clothes. You should only eat seasonally. And you can't have any unnatural EMFs, including from Starlink. I'm not saying that causes any problems. I'm just saying you want to be a purist. Let's do it. And let's also then not have any microplastics and BPA and endocrine disruptors. And like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should support my biology for the world I live in. And that's what biohacking does, and Nano V is a part of that.
That's really the whole point. And we don't want to override anything. We want to just support it and kind of make up for all the negative things that are going on for the body.
You don't want to override anything, Rowena? I don't want to override aging.
Well, the body will do that. You support the body,
There you go.
and that we want this perpetual health.
You want to let the body do what it will do when it has enough energy.
And if it lives longer with this perpetual health, that's probably a logical conclusion, but no promises. That you just want to feel great all the time.
Excellent. I don't know if there's anything else we can talk about that has to do with easy water, cells, and Nano V at ing3.com/Dave. And guys, you may try it, you may not, but now you know about water and cells. And if you're concerned about any of the things that seem much worse now than they were 5 years ago in terms of health problems with people, there's 30 million people who have a lot less energy than they used to, maybe more. There's an increase in soft tissue cancers in younger people. There's an epidemic of infertility. Your bottom line is you've got to take control of your health and of your biology to make it do what you want. And that is to live well, have tons of energy, be relaxed, function well, and do what you want it to do. I don't think you can do that without biohacking right now, because we don't live in the world of 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And we can fix a lot of the things we did. In the meantime, maybe you should have enough electrical output from your cells to do that good work. Nano V is a part of that.
And we did our first podcast 7.5 years ago.
Wow, it's been that long?
And you're still a Nano V lover. And we love that.
Oh, yeah. You saw it downstairs in my living room, and we have it at 40 years in. So it's one of those things, low effort, high return. And that's what I'm all about.
Love it. Love it.
See you next time on the Human Upgrade Podcast.